Hi everybody and welcome back to my modeling channel. So today we're gonna build a Zvezda Airbus A320 on a scale 1/44. So let's open the box and see what we have inside. So initially we're gonna start with our decal sheet and the clear parts. So the decal sheet is pretty straightforward. It's made for an airplane from Aeroflot. So you have all you need basically to do it, even the wings, overwings panel, the overwing exit and the engine panels. We also have some clear part, and actually they are very nice detailed. We have the clear part for the cockpit, then for the passengers window of course, and we also have nav lights and landing lights that we can attach. So for this aircraft, I purchased some covers, some masking tape, and I will use them basically for the windows and the cockpit windows. So as I was pretty happy about the result of our Ilyushin 62, I will try to replicate the same with a more simple livery on that Airbus. So let's have a look on the instruction sheet. So as you can see, initially you have the possibility to do the plane on a stand. You could put it gear up, flaps down, gear down, open door, and in the air with the gear down and the flaps deployed or in. So quite a lot of different options that you can build basically. Then the first page is a review of all the parts within this kit. And then we're gonna go into the kit build itself. So we have lots of instruction, but everything is pretty straightforward with all the informations that are required to build this kit. And of course, the last page is about the decal sheet. So let's continue on and move on with the kit itself. So let's have a look on that kit. Basically, once again, it's a beautiful Zvezda kit with a lot of details. On that first sprue, you have both half of the fuselage. You have the possibility to build this plane with an open front passenger door. And you have all the details of the cockpit itself. So it's very nice. You also have the nose landing gear and the main landing gear. The struts are compressed for the ground version, or the air version the struts is deployed. And the gears are here. You have some cockpit seats. The cockpit is here, and then you have the brake unit as well. So lots of little details, and I believe it's going to be a really enjoyable kit. So now we are going to check out the wings. So basically the wings are in 3 parts. Then we have the options of putting the flaps and the slats out or in on the aircraft. And for this you will also have the flaps fairing basically who are in or out. So you'll have a little bit more details. You also have the winglets for that kit. And now let's move on to the last sprue. So what we have here actually is quite nice, and I really like that with Zvezda as well, because you have the options of building both type of engines, and that's really a good point for that kit, because I remember in the past Revel just delete one type of engines, and if you wanted to build some other ones it was not possible. So unless you had a couple of spare like I normally do, it wasn't possible. So as usual, all the panel lines are very finely engraved in the plastic, so it's going to be a beautiful work to complete that kit. So enough of talking, and let's start building. So I'm going to start this build by preparing the cockpit. So initially I will paint the interior of the cockpit and the panel with a light grey color with the airbrush, and then the cockpit floor with a dark grey color basically, and then I will add some other colors, and will prepare that part as I decided to this time use some mask for the cockpit windows. So I will now start to prepare all the parts for the main component, and slowly we're gonna start to assemble the cockpit together. And then what we will be next, we will have to glue also all the windows toward the fuselage. So now I'm putting the panels, and shortly after that we are going to close the passenger door, as I will not keep it open on that aircraft, on that model. I might do that on a later version. So after that I will use some regular glue, and I will glue all the windows inside the aircraft. So now we're gonna paint all the other panel and the pedestal as well, and slowly prepare all our cockpit. Now what we're doing is I'm gonna paint with a light gray color all the circuit breakers panel located behind the co-pilot seat. After preparing the cockpit, we're now going to prepare all the seats, and those are the back part of the standby seat in that aircraft. So they are located behind the pilot and co-pilot seat. Those are for check airmen. After that, I will use the same blue color to prepare the pilot seats. While all the paint is drying, I will put the mask on every single window of that Airbus A320, and I will finish by putting the cockpit window and the cockpit windshield basically on the clear part. So that takes a little bit of time, but with time and patience you can get a very nice result. After that I use some clear part, and what I did is I found on the internet some some cockpit panel, and so I found the A320 series. So what I did is I copy them, print them on a paper sheet, reduce it to the correct size, and then I just glue them on the cockpit, and instead of using any decals. And actually I have to say that with the amount of with the reduced vision we have and we will have later on, it's the perfect fit. It doesn't need to be a photo etch part or anything like that, as it's a little bit pricey for that. So once the glue was dry, I add as well the seats in the cockpit, and then our cockpit is now ready to be glued inside that fuselage. So we will fix it now inside the fuselage, and after that it will be time to add some weight. So for that I use some regular modeling paste, and after that I glue both of the fuselage half together, and now we're gonna put the clear part and the cockpit window. This will require a little bit later on some extra putty to fill up all the gaps, and some very attentionate work on that, because as the clear part are there, it will be a little bit difficult. So after that, when it was dry, I used some sandpaper. Initially I used a 600, and then later on I used some 800 and 1000 even. It's now time for the finish of the sanding. So for these I use some very thin sandpaper. I use a 1000 basically, and then I use my basically my scalpel blade to rescribe a part of the funnel. So initially I use that, then a razor blade saw, and then a rescribing tool from Tamiya, and then that allow me to have the correct shape and avoid to have any misshape or any other issues. It's now time to prepare our wings. So this time I will put the slats and the flaps in retracted position. So initially what I did, I glued together both half of the wings together, and after that we will start doing some adding basically the slats in the retracted position. But for these there was also a little bit of sanding and preparing all those parts, as there was a little bit of plastics some plastic was remaining basically from the mold, and after that putting the flaps together, and that's a pretty easy task, but the preparation of the parts took a little bit of time. After this we're gonna add those slats, and with the amount of glue I should have used some other glues, because I realized that my regular Revel glue was a little bit too strong for that. So after that I use basically I drill a hole on the exhaust of the APU, and that would be very useful later on, as I had some issues with the weight shifting within the fuselage. So I was able to enter basically a string and send it back to the front of the aircraft, otherwise my plane would have been sitting on its tail. So after that we start preparing the engine themselves, and that was pretty straightforward, I have to say. Not a lot of work on sanding. The parts were very easy to glue together, and then we have of course to paint the interior of the engine and also the fan disc. So now we're gonna fill all the gaps on the wings, especially leading edge and trailing edge as well, and as there was also some little bit of issues with the flaps and the slats. After that also we fill up the gaps on those flaps fairing. Then it was time to also remove all the gaps and fill up the gaps on the engine as well. Then we close the nose gear door. For these I use just a regular glue, and I had to add some parts on at the front, and there was a little bit of a fiddling was required, but nothing much to complain about. Of course I had to add a little bit more putty against to make sure that everything was set, and then we're doing this as well on the APU exhaust. So after finishing the sanding work, it was time to rescribe all the panels. So for this, as I did, I usually use either a scalpel saw, or then I use my rescribing tool. Then it was time to put the wings next on the fuselage and glue them all together, and for that I used the regular Revel needle glue. And I have to say that with Zvezda normally all the work is much easier, as there is not a lot of fiddling to do. So we're now entering in the last phase of the build. We're gonna just glue the engines on the wings, and that's using still the same technique. It's now time to go to the paint booth. So for this I will start to paint our wings and the wheels and some accessories, basically the gear doors, and I will use a very light gray for that. So after this it will be time to do the other colors, but at the moment we're gonna paint our wings this color. I will use some decals later on for the corrugat as well. So after finishing the grey and the wings, it was time to put the coat of royal blue, and I used a Tamiya paint for that, and it went very easily, as you can see. And I had also some remain of grey that I mixed with a little bit of blue that I put on the cockpit window, as you could see at the beginning of that sequence, and therefore that gives me the proper color for the interior of the cockpit. After I used some dark metal for the brakes, the brake unit of the A320, and then we're gonna use some light polished metallic paint for the strut of the undercarriage. After that I might use some other colors. So once that was finished, it was time to put the white coat on the upper side of that fuselage of that A320. So it took a little bit of time, but with time and patience we always get a pretty nice result, as you can see. So we are now going to start preparing our undercarriage. So as you can see, the nose gear comes in two parts, and then we're gonna have to use we're gonna put the wheels as well on that, and then we're gonna have to let the glue cure a little bit. Then we're gonna add the brake units inside the main landing gear, or the main landing wheel. And after putting that, we're going to be able to assemble that main landing gear. While everything is drying, now we're going to be able to remove all the masking tape for that cockpit window and that fuselage, and I have to say that I was very pleased with the result. I'm considering to purchase a little bit more of those, as I was quite happy of that result. That give a much more realistic effect as well on the aircraft. So some of my future A320 may be more often like this, depending on the type of decals I'm going to use. So after that, it was time to start the decaling process. So for those I use my all Brazil decal, and I had a sheet with 3 Canadian aircraft. You saw the former one, the previous one with the Air Canada with the special livery, and now we're gonna put this Canadian Airlines that was requested by some of my followers. So I hope he's gonna recognize himself and enjoy that. So the process was, the decal were very thin, but they were also quite fragile. I required a break on a couple of occasions. So that require some more patience and some more work. In some case I replaced, basically I tried to find the taint and paint it myself instead of using the decals, and I have to say that was mainly for the front of that orange paint, and that worked, and the rest was that was handleable, nothing really too complicated with those surfaces. So it's now time for the final touch-ups. So I'm gonna paint basically the the beacons and the nav lights in different colors, and then we're gonna add as well the anti-eye sleep on those engines, and then we're gonna glue now the horizontal stabilizer on that A320. So this is the final result of that Airbus A320 from Zvezda on the scale 144. For this I used those Canadian Airlines livery decal from Brass Decal, and I have to say that I was quite happy of the final result. The close-up on the cockpit is also quite nice, give more realistic taste to the model itself. I hope you enjoyed that build with me. If you did so, please give me a thumbs up or subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I will see you soon for another build review. Thank you for watching.